Okay. I'll give you a little background on what factory farming is. It's a system of farming in which there's large numbers of livestock which are raised indoors in conditions intended to maximize production at minimal cost. And I'd like to say that the use of unnatural feeds, hormones, and antibiotics in factory farming is negatively affecting the health of the human population overall. And some supporting claims to for that, humans are more at risk for chronic disease with the use of factory farming. The six growth hormones commonly used by the U.S. dairy industry has been shown to significantly increase the risk of breast, prostate, and colon cancer in beef consumers. There's also poor sanitation and waste management of factory farms, as well as the animal waste in the factory farms, which can lead to a contamination of the food supply by bacteria such as E. coli and Salmonella. Abigail Gear states that due to billion tons of manure produced every year in the U.S. From factory farms, contaminate water, which is used to irrigate the crops, which can end up contaminating our vegetables, such as like our spinach that we consume. So this puts humans at a greater risk of getting chronic diseases. There's also an increase in the obesity rate with the use of factory farming. Animal products are the primary source of saturated fat in the American diet, and saturated fat is linked to heart disease and obesity. The unnatural feeds used to promote growth in animals on factory farms increases the saturated fat content of the meat. There's also a risk of drug-resistant bacteria more easily obtained by humans. And an estimated 70% of the antibiotics used in the U.S. that are given to farm animals are for non-therapeutic purposes. So this helps promote the drug-resistant bacteria that can be obtained from these antibiotics that are used in the animals. And antibiotics are used to promote like weight gain in animals. There's also antibiotic resistant infections that can kill up to 90,000 Americans every year. And my last point is on zoonotic diseases that are transferred to humans with the use of factory farming. Experts believe that the outbreak of the H1N1 virus was caused by the overcrowding of pigs in farms and the storage of their waste in the manure lagoons. There are also large groups of animals that are confined in these areas, which become the breeding grounds for pathogens. And
You got an exit line?
also, yeah. And then I would say that there's other ways to raise animals instead of using factory farming that can,
Okay. All right, Alicia, the proposition is in the first part of the speech, but I think you should want to highlight it a little bit more because casual listeners might miss it because you don't really indicate that it's the proposition. It's just one of the things that you plan on saying instead of it is the thing that you plan on saying. So that's a little bit problematic. I like the definition of factory farming at the beginning as an attention device. That's fine. I think this is one of those places where some information about how much of our food product comes from factory farms and how widespread these practices are, that would probably be helpful to kind of set up the controversy on this. There is a preview of the supporting points, but all of the supporting points are a little long, especially the second and the third ones, which seem to have multiple component parts to them. So it should be simplified a little bit to make it easier for us to listen to and retain what the main ideas are. You can get into the details on the individual points instead of trying to present it in the preview. Unfortunately, after the preview, I didn't really see a very clear structure in the body of the speech. So you may have set up a structure at the beginning, but it wasn't clear that you were following that structure in the body of the speech. And part of the problem is that you have a tendency to just start making claims. And I heard one source citation at the beginning talking about the billion tons of manure that are produced each year and often end up in the water. And I think the source that you gave me was Gear, but I don't know who Gear is and why I should be listening to that particular person. And after that, there's not really any sources. There's one place where you say scientists think, and I'm going, well, I don't know who the scientists are and why I should trust the ones who are thinking about this. This is one of those places where you want to give us a source citation so that we can evaluate the credibility of their thinking on these particular points. There's a statistic, like I said, there's that 70% statistic that you had at one point, but there's no source on that. The 90,000 people who die from some kind of infection each year, there's no source on that. And the link to those infections from animal factory farming is a little thin at this particular point. You mentioned the notion that animals are fed these antibiotics as a process to create growth and increase their size. That, again, this sounds like a claim. I don't know who's got any information to support that. There's no evidence that's being cited to support that particular issue. So that's a little bit problematic. Saturated fats are probably dangerous. I think most people would probably accept that as a truism, but the notion that the antibiotics increase the amount of saturated fats in the food that is being consumed, that I think needs some kind of data to support it. Either an authority who studied this, some statistical information, even, weighing the stakes and doing some analysis on what there is from one to another would be a little bit helpful in making those points. You struggled at the end trying to find an exit line, and I think you just need to come back to the original point that you had and say that factory farming is in fact causing, producing all these negative harms to the public, health harms in particular. All right, thank you.